This is a question from another YouTube listener, Paul, who writes, please could you help us understand how the Conservatives salting the earth or laying traps for Labour will be seen by voters? Will it reinforce the view that they've run out of ideas? Or do voters not really pick up on these things? What do you think, Anoosh?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this listener has picked up on something that is happening.
Yeah.
So the main traps seem to be this £19 billion worth of departmental cuts, which are supposed to come in by 2027, 28, which are basically seen as a fiction. And actually the head of the OBR was speaking this week, and he said the lack of these details for the years ahead on spending in those departments meant that the OBR's forecasts were beyond a work of fiction because
they're not even written
it's not
down.
going to happen. Yeah. And so that's a problem for Labour, because if the Tories use that money to make tax cuts, then Labour might have to reverse them in order to put some more spending into those public services. Councils are going bankrupt. I mean, it's already happening, but it's going to be a big bomb that goes off under Labour. The selling off of HS2 land, which means that Labour can't really reverse those HS2 plans because that stuff is being sold off quite cheaply.
I think they're quite happy about that one.
Well, I mean, it gives them an excuse, doesn't it, whenever they're asked about what they do on HS2. And also all of these policies that make life harder for foreign students being here means that universities could start going bankrupt as well. That's something that one Labour shadow minister described to me as a poison pill. So they are aware that some of these traps are being laid along the line, and you can read about more of them in Will Dunn, our business editor's excellent piece on Jeremy Hunt's plan for chaos. I mean, there's all sorts in there, from childcare to student debt. Social care reforms have been pushed to October 2025, for example, and also charging imports on EU goods coming in, which has been delayed 5 times already. That's something that Labour eventually will have to bring in, and that's going to put food prices up and other prices up. So there's all of these things. Our listener is right, but I'm not sure necessarily if the public picks up on it now as a sort of the Conservatives are running out of ideas. I think the risk is that they pick up on it when the actual impact of it is playing out in their lives under the next government, which is kind of the idea for laying traps. And the Tories are not alone in doing this. You know, other governments do it as well, trying to make life as difficult as possible for their likely successors.
Yeah. Is it laying traps, or is it just not taking responsibility for the problems of the country at the moment because they're focused on the election? I think you're right to say that the public won't necessarily notice that the Conservatives are laying traps as such, but they will notice, I think, that the Conservatives aren't necessarily grasping the problems that are facing the country. They will recognise that there are endemic problems within the public realm, that the Brexit agreement isn't perhaps as good as it should be, that local councils aren't performing as well as they should be. So they recognise the problems, and they'll recognise that that's happened under a Tory government. And I think it also provides Labour with the narrative that, look, we had a really bad inheritance. We have all these problems that were left to us by a Conservative government. We need the time to fix them. Now, I think what's really interesting, given that 19 or 18 billion pound black hole in the public finances that's penciled in, but the government won't talk about or explain where they want to come from. Neither's Labour, though. So they're sort of waiting, and they say on all their fiscal policy, look, we don't really know what the economy is going to be like when we inherit it. Therefore, we need to wait and see before we set out full spending plans. Okay, fine. However, what they're also doing, which I found utterly remarkable in recent weeks, is that Rachel Reeves is sort of mooting the idea that she wants to reduce taxes on working people.
Yeah.
If you've got a 18 billion pound black hole, you can't really reduce taxes on working people unless you increase borrowing a lot, or you increase taxes on the wealthy, which she's also ruled out. So they're sort of fixing themselves into a bind here, because I think Labour need to recognise the fact that you need to win a mandate for what you do in office. You need to build consensus. You need to explain to people this is going to happen, this is going to be bad, you need to be ready for it. If they suddenly come out having sort of suggested to people that taxes might be reduced on working people under a Labour government, once they're in office, they say, look, to be honest, the situation's so bad we have to raise taxes. Well, people will go, well, you promised you were going to cut them.
Yeah.
It's the same on things like migration. Keir Starmer has said explicitly, as he did at the CBI last year, that he wants immigration to fall. Yeah. Is he going to do that? Well, is he going to take the economic hit that entails? Is he going to invest in the skills and provide support to businesses that they'll need if they've not got this, or they can't rely on this immigration dependency, as Keir Starmer calls it? Is he going to do that? I'm not sure. So I think Labour needs to recognise that expectation and reality, they do have to align sometimes.
On immigration, I think that they're hoping that the fact that a lot of the recent figures are down to one-offs, like the Ukraine refugee scheme, Hong Kong scheme, and also the fact that there's been this lag in terms of foreign students after COVID, and that will work its way through the system, so the numbers will automatically come down. They certainly don't have a plan for cutting it beyond hoping that the figures will just be like more flattering to a Labour government once they come in. So you're absolutely right.
A shadow minister said that to me last night, and I said, well, we'll point that out in the press, and they just said, well, we'll just keep saying it, so we'll see who wins. Okay.
Also, there may be other conflicts where you need to bring people in. I don't think it's necessarily a sustainable thing to rely on.
Good point. And then on stopping the boats as well, as we discussed last time, I think the boats aren't just going to stop because Keir Starmer enters number 10.
Yeah.
They're still going to have to address the issue. Now, I think there is some confidence within Labour that the Europeans might be slightly more amenable to a deal. They think the French are key to that, and following the Brexit years, they think that many people in Europe have essentially written off the Conservative government, not necessarily because they're insincere, but because they're just completely unpredictable, so therefore you can't deal with them. So they hope, I think, that if they can get a better deal with the French, then that might stop the boats, because the right-wing press aren't going to be in any way less enthusiastic about stopping the boats just because the Labour government is in. No, they'll hit them with it day after day. So Labour will have to solve that, I think.
Thanks so much for watching. We'd love to know what you think. Please make sure you leave your comments below. And if you enjoyed watching this podcast, you can watch more of our videos on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like and subscribe.